Greetings and welcome to the Introduction to Astronomy. In this week's Misconception in Astronomy, we will talk about our sun and find out if our sun is at the center of our galaxy. So, is the sun at the center of our galaxy? Well, the answer is a very definitely no. However, early measurements made us think that this might be the case. And in fact, here we see measurements made by William Herschel, counting the number of stars in different directions. And our sun would be located relatively close to the center of this distribution of stars. However, one of the problems with this and why we used to think we were at the center is dust. And dust was not accounted for in the earlier maps, and that was one of the big problems. If you take the dust into account, then we are nowhere near the center, and in fact, we can see the distribution here, and there is our sun down toward the bottom there in what is known as the Orion Spur, about halfway out from the center, or maybe a little bit more even. So what this means is that if we want to really map this, counting stars is not the way to do it, because there is so much dust in the plane of our galaxy that we're only seeing our own local area, the region around us within the Milky Way. So we're not seeing the entire galaxy because we're stuck inside it, and we cannot travel the tens of thousands of light years that would be needed up above to look back down on the galaxy. So how did we measure the true distances? Well, that was by mapping the globular clusters. Globular clusters are old parts of our galaxy. In fact, some of the earliest parts to form, and we see those here with Harlow Shapley, who mapped out the globular clusters and measured their distances. So we can see there in black Herschel's little estimate of our Milky Way. The globular cluster distribution shows that really we are far from the center if we can assume that the globular clusters are distributed in a roughly spherical manner around our galaxy. And that would tell us that we are not at the center, but actually well away from the center. And in fact, we would not want to be near the center. The center is a very inhospitable place. So if we were at the center, the radiation levels would be much higher, and the levels of supernovae going off, and it would be much harder for life to exist close to the center of our galaxy. It's part of what we call the galactic habitable zone, is that you have to be far enough away from the central region of the galaxy in order for there to be a chance for life to exist. Now, in all, this kind of ties back into what is known as the Copernican principle. That means we are not at the center, leading back to Copernicus, who back in the 1500s suggested that the sun, not the earth, was at the center of the universe. We know that he was wrong because while the sun is at the center of our solar system, it is not at the center of our galaxy, nor at the center of the universe. However, it was that first step in taking Earth and us away from some special place in the universe. So let's go ahead and finish up here with our summary. And what we've looked at today and talked about is that the sun is most definitely not at the galactic center. In fact, it's more than halfway out. And the problem was that early measurements did not account for dust, which absorbs the light, allowing us or keeping us from seeing distant stars. So that concludes this week's Misconception in Astronomy on the sun being near the center of our galaxy. We'll be back again next week for another Misconception in Astronomy. So until then, have a great day, everyone, and I will see you in class.